All right, so let's talk about lunch breaks. Just a quick poll, those of you listening, watching. All right, how many of you skip lunch on a regular basis? Turns out I thought that I was kind of a rare bird, but for years I've had a broadcast schedule that had me broadcasting during lunch, and so it was very normal for me to go 4 days, 5, some days a whole week where I didn't have lunch. And, I would eat breakfast or eat afterwards. I know some people that don't eat lunch at all. But apparently, I just saw this. This is very interesting. You're going, where am I going with this? Some new data about Gen Zers being the ones who take lunch the least. In fact, they're skipping lunch more than other generations. 7 in 10 Gen Z workers report they don't take lunch at least once a week. That's compared to about half of millennial workers and 4 in 10 Gen Xers. Only 1/3 of boomers give up their midday meal. Them boomers, man, they like that lunch. They like that meat and three. And so you dive into this a little bit more and you go, overall, 48% of workers go without lunch at least once a week. Now, I'm going to break this down because I think it seems like just a kind of a, okay, this is a not so interesting little piece of data. There's a lot here. And this is a pretty serious issue. Now, let's talk about Gen Z because we're going to start with Gen Z. They are the generation with the highest percentage of people saying, I go without lunch at least once a week. The reason is that Gen Zers worry their bosses would frown on them taking a break. And when they do take a lunch, they are most likely to step away for fewer than 30 minutes. So I started thinking about this because the data is here, not a lot of explanation on the data. So I started thinking, okay, I think we've got two things going on, and I don't think this is just a Gen Z problem. So this is set up as a Gen Z headline, why Gen Zers skip their lunch break, but this is not limited to Gen Z. All right, so let's look at this. In the terms of the newer workers, they've not been working very long, Gen Zers. And they're twice as likely to worry that the boss is going to be upset if they take a lunch. When they do take a lunch, it's most of the time less than 30 minutes. So what's going on? Well, the first and obvious thing is there is a culture problem at the company. We have a company culture problem when this fear of taking lunch is rampant. Now, this could be a couple of problems with the culture. The simplest one here is not a sinister one. It's just a lack of communication. So you take a Gen Zer who's new to the workforce, they come in, and it's not communicated well to them, about things like lunch. If their hiring manager doesn't sit down in the onboarding and remind them, or if it's, so it should be mentioned in the final interview, but certainly in the onboarding, if not. And it's just simple. Hey, make sure you get some lunch, okay? You don't have to go off campus. You can eat here. Let me tell you what your lunch options are. It should be just normal course of communication. Hey, we got these restaurants around here. Making it normal to where they go, oh, okay, they expect me to take a lunch. And so in the onboarding process, just a simple handout or an email that says, here are all the restaurants within a 5-mile radius. We have rooms on campus where you can eat, whatever that basic communication is to where it takes the stigma away, because what is unknown to somebody becomes a source of fear. So I think a lot of companies just aren't doing a good job communicating to these new workers, and they're the new guys. And so they don't want to stand out for the wrong reasons, and they sure as heck don't want to lose their job. And so absent of clarity on what they can do for lunch, they just go, I don't know what I can do, so I'm not going to do anything. I think that's probably a big reason. The second reason why Gen Zers and anybody else is saying, I don't feel like I can. And again, Gen Zers are the ones saying, I can't step away. I'm afraid my boss will get upset if I take a break. Okay, so the second reason is probably a little bit more on the sinister side. And again, not intentional, but just a lack of intention makes it bad. And that is there's a culture of fear. in the communication across the board and the way things are communicated, there is it feels like there's always another shoe that could drop. It's like that teacher, you remember, who just was always looking to get you, or maybe it was a substitute teacher that came on and was like, I'm not going to get run over, so I'm going to be extra strict. And you just felt like they were looking for something, just looking for you to raise your eyebrow or whisper or do anything wrong. And so in a culture like that, where the leader gets triggered easily, gets anger easily, speaks in a way that can be humiliating, certainly borderline bullying, then it's very easy to see how a mentality like this can happen. When people are afraid in general, they become afraid of everything. A fearful person might start out in fear of one issue, but if they just become so consumed with fear because of one source, all of a sudden everything makes them fearful. I debated saying this, but I think it bears debating. Y'all can talk about it. I won't get in the comment section. But to a person, if you were to interview people who wore masks during the pandemic, I will tell you, you will find that they worry and they are fearful about a lot of issues. For people who never wanted to wear the mask and you had to basically berate us, that's me, I'm going to raise my hand, I got news for you. I'm not afraid of a lot of things. Now, I'm not saying I'm better and you are worse. I'm saying if you can even discuss this without creating controversy, and at this point I really don't care, but the point is that fearful people are usually afraid of a lot of different things. Well, people who aren't afraid, it takes a lot to spook them. And that's the point. So I think leaders, the takeaway here is, if you've got people who are afraid to take a break at lunch, you're dealing with a couple things. One, they're fearful, and maybe you've got an environment that makes them a little fearful on that. And you sure as heck can take away, you've not communicated well that, hey, we expect you to eat. Your brain is better with your blood sugar in proper places. Your brain is better with downtime. If nothing else, a lunch break ought to be something that every leader encourages, because it allows your people to step away, to let the brain re-engage, and the data on that breaks between meetings is huge. So there you go. Now, one other little interesting thing for leaders here, because this is pretty funny to me. No surprise here. People that take a lunch break say they believe that lunch leaves them feeling less burned out. So that elongated break in the day is good. But this is really interesting. About 8 in 10 Gen Z workers said that complimentary lunch would drive their decision to head into the office. Overall, 67% of hybrid workers said they would come in for some free lunch. And the reason this came up is because the survey came out that a lot of companies are considering offering free lunches as a benefit, because they can get some tax write-offs too. And the free lunch would kind of encourage people to eat and, more importantly, take a break, and then an added benefit to actually communicate with their coworkers. So really, really interesting stuff there. What's the big takeaway? Change your schedule. Don't skip lunch. It's not worth it. The negative effects are a ripple effect on you in every area of your life.